If there is an anime that I think any Christian anime fan should watch, heck, any anime fan should watch, it should be The Ranking of Kings. Honestly, this anime to me is unlike any anime that I've seen before, and this is mostly because the art style seemed very similar to something that I would see like on Cartoon Network. But I do think this is one of the things that makes the anime really great because it just reminds me of my childhood. If you need a show to show someone to encourage them that they can overcome the obstacles that are standing in their way despite the hindrances that they may have, I do suggest that you watch this anime, and if they like anime. Granted, there is some blood and killing that happens in the anime, so like watch at your own risk if you're like squeamish of that type of stuff. It also has like elements of magic, like it is what it is. Like just watch it, okay? The Ranking of Kings revolves around a small boy named Boji, who is a prince who is next in line to become the next king. He lives in the shadow of his father, the king named King Boss, who is the strongest king and 7th ranked king in the world. At the beginning of the show, you find that Boss is very sick and he's about to die. And because of this, Boji is only naturally supposed to be the next in line for the throne. The problem is, though, that Boji is really tiny and deaf. Because of this, there is much doubt by the public on whether or not Boji could even be able to lead the kingdom well, but rather they favor Prince Daida, who resembles King Boss the most. Boji is weak and does not possess the strength like that of his father, which doesn't make any sense because his dad is a giant and his mom is also a giant. It would just make sense, but his brother Prince Daida also seems like the perfect son. As I said before, this is looked at as the one that deserves to be on the throne after his father dies. But Daida, in the first few episodes, you realize he is not really fit to be king. He also looks down on his brother and believes he is better than him. Daida is a prideful, arrogant brat who is entitled, and it's shown in this heartbreaking scene when Boji and Daida are sparring. While they're sparring, Boji is showing that just because he is deaf and small, don't mean he's not really him for real. Like, Boji shows himself to be quick and fast and able to dodge and land blows on Daida, but those blows really aren't strong enough to knock him down. Daida, being a sore loser, calls foul play and accuses Boji of cheating, and because of this, Boji has to suffer getting beat up by Daida in order to satisfy his ego. Yo, I tell you, that scene annoyed me so much. Like, I was just like, yo, like, you obviously see your older brother better than you. You might as well, like, claim defeat. Like, but nah, he was like, dang, I gotta one-up him. King Boss ends up dying, and Boji is setting up to be the next king. And to the Queen Mother Hilling, Boji's stepmother, who I can't tell either hates or loves Boji, 4 strongest men in the high court put in a vote to have Daida be the king instead of Boji. Let me not forget, the only person that is even rooting for Boji in all of this story is his friend Kage, a member of the Shadow Clan, who ended up meeting outside of the kingdom because Kage was robbing him, but that didn't matter to Boji because he loved that he could make a friend. And very quickly, Kage wanted to be friends with him because they share a similar background of not being treated very nicely. Because Boji was not desired as king, Boji decided to take a quest on to get stronger, and while I won't give a full detail of the show, it is mixed with drama, tragedy, and action, and you find yourself rooting for Boji all the way through. But what I will highlight are some of the things that stick out to me in the show and how I believe that they point me to the story of Jesus. Boji, being a small and deaf prince who was perceived as weak, was not a desirable king to the subjects of Kingdom of Boss. He was the offspring of 2 giants who were stronger and powerful, and because he did not resemble what the people thought they needed as a king, they didn't want him, which caused everyone in the kingdom to look at him as incapable, not worthy of value, and not the true heir king that deserved the throne. But instead, everyone looked to Prince Daida because they thought that he was what they needed in a future king. When I saw this, I immediately thought of Isaiah 53, which says, "Or he grew up before them like a young plant, and like a root out of the dry ground. He had no form of majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. As one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not." In the Gospels, we see Jesus in his earthly ministry be despised by those to whom he came to minister to. Not only was he the one true God that came to dwell amongst his people in the flesh, but he was the promised Messiah that the Jews were waiting for. Yet, because he did not fit the description or expectations of the promised Messiah, he was despised and rejected by the very people he came to save. Another thing that grabbed my attention in the anime is how King Boss sought power at any cost to become the number 1 king. Throughout King Boss's journey, you see that he is constantly fighting in order to prove himself. You will notice in the story, King Boss went to great lengths of getting power, to the point that he made a deal with a demon that would take his son's strength and then add it to his own to become more powerful. That is why Boji, being the son of two giants, is tiny and weak. He was robbed of his power. Immediately, this resembled to me how in our real life, people will do anything to get more power, status, money, whatever, even to the point of losing their own soul and making a deal with darkness to get it fulfilled. Jesus put it this way in Matthew 16 when he says, "For what will it benefit someone if he gains the whole world yet loses his life? Or what will anyone give in exchange for his life?" King Boss was so messed up in wanting to seek power that he had disregard for his son. I think we can all be like that, and sin takes advantage where we selfishly see what we want or desire, and it doesn't matter who we hurt, we want to get what we want. In the Old Testament, you would have nations who would sacrifice their own children to idols or false gods in order for them to gain something, whether that be financial prosperity, children, or appeasement of their gods. Nothing good came out of this, only injustice of trampling on another human made in the image of God. The reality is they really didn't get anything in return, because idols never give back. They can only take, because they are false gods. There are so many other things that I want to draw out from the show that I'll probably do a second video, but at the end of season 1, Boji, who has gone on a quest to grow stronger, has done so from learning the Despa arts from Prince Despa, where he teaches Boji how to defeat his enemies using his agility and precision. Boji, with his new strength, returns to his home, the Kingdom of Boss, where they are pretty much on the brink of destruction from a coup that was caused by Miranjo, and all of their strongest knights of that kingdom have been defeated. With the return of Boji and the fact he is one of the strongest in the land now, their doubt in him has turned into belief, because they realize how strong Boji has actually become. And after all they have been through, they realize that he is the king that they should have reigned in the first place. Because, fun fact, Daida ended up becoming king, but he was tricked by Miranjo, who ended up allowing Daida to be possessed by King Boss. And he wanted the kingdom to be destroyed because she wanted Boss's full attention. And you would have to think, if only Boji was to be chosen king in the first place, this probably wouldn't have happened. Biblical similarities? This most likely might be a stretch, but because Prince Daida was chosen as king, this caused so many problems within the Boss Kingdom, because he was basically being manipulated by Miranjo to resurrect King Boss, because she wanted to have Boss with her forever. This really only reminds me of how in the Old Testament, God was the true king of Israel. The king that made them distinct from the nations around them was that they did not need a human king to represent them, because he was their king. Yet, if they were to ask for a king, things would not go well for them, and it didn't, because the Old Testament is full of kings not ruling rightly, which led to Israel being judged by God, destruction of Judah and Israel, and them being sent into exile for their unfaithfulness, led by the king. But the good news is, and the similarities I see in the show, is that the Kingdom of Boss had their rightful king Boji show up for his kingdom to defeat their enemies and save his people. In real life, knowing that Israel and we were being beaten and enslaved to our flesh, sin, and Satan, God sends forth his self into the human flesh to live the perfect life we cannot live, dying the death that me and you deserve, and then rising on the third day for our justification to defeat Satan and deliver us from his hand. Jesus is the true king that has saved us, not by sword or armies, but he has saved us by his very own body and blood put on the cross for us. Colossians 2 puts it this way: "And you were dead in your trespasses and the circumcision of your flesh. God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him." The Ranking of Kings was a fun anime to watch, and I'm excited for it to continue. Although the MC isn't an overpowered character with all the fancy power-ups, the way that Boji treats others despite how they treat him makes Boji a top 5 character in my heart. And honestly, it reminds me of Christ in the way that I may have treated him, or people treat him in a certain way, but he doesn't respond in anger or malice, but he responds in love and kindness, and he demonstrates that by going to the cross for us. If you like the Ranking of Kings anime, let me know what you think of the show, and if you have an anime you would want me to cover and see if I could point out Christian themes in the anime, put them in the comment section below. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys later.